we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on introducing the redesigned Survey of Entering Student Engagement, or SENSE, as we call it. My name is Courtney Atkins. I'm director at CCCSE, and a couple of my good and great colleagues are joining me today. Alicia Betzinger, our associate director of research, and Emilio Delboy, our program manager of operations. I think Emilio is letting you know right now that we will be sharing a recording of the webinar after we're done with it. So look out for that. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to post them in the Q&A, and one of us will respond to you either immediately or at the end of the session during our Q&A portion of the presentation. But as you know, today we're going to be talking about our redesigned SENSE survey, and we're going to walk through what's changed with the SENSE survey, why we redesigned it, and how the updated instrument and analytics were really designed with the intention to better support you and your entering students. But before we get into the redesigned survey, I want to ground us in the student voice. And as you listen to these students speak, and these students are talking about the first time they came to their community college campus, and as you listen to them speak, I want you to think about what early experiences seem to matter most to these students, and where do institutions like yours have an opportunity to respond to what they're saying. So let's go ahead and listen in.
You are definitely like totally lost. And like you are just going by and you're like, I think this is the classroom that I'm signed up for. And you show up and you don't know anybody. Um, and you're just like, I hope I'm in the right place. And, luckily for me, it worked out right. But there's definitely a sort of like apprehension. This is like the first major step of becoming an adult separate from your parents. And like, sure, I'm older now, and so I haven't lived at home for 7 years and whatnot. But this is still like one of those first things that you do on your own without other people around you. You can't have your support group attend class with you each day. And so there is a little bit of nervousness and apprehension on that first day. And throughout the first couple of weeks, you're like not really sure what's coming, and you just have to take things as they come, I guess.
The first time I came to this college, what went through my head was one, it's really big for me. It's a lot bigger than what I'm used to. Two, I'm a pretty shy person, so it was very overwhelming for me because I was like, I have to talk to new people, and who do I talk to? What building do I go to?
The first time I stepped on campus, I was terrified. There was no maps. There was like a single map, and it just looked like a maze. I didn't know where to go, where I was going, or who anybody was. But eventually, you get used to it and you start learning things.
When I first stepped on campus, I was really nervous. It was move-in day, and I didn't know anyone, and I was just moving far from home, so I was just really nervous.
I would say whenever I first entered the college, one of my first memories are just being extremely anxious. This was the first time I went back to school after COVID. I had a gap year because I did not want to, go at the beginning with everything that happened. But I was very anxious and also extremely nervous because I am also the first in my family to go to college.
All right, thank you. And we do notice there's a little black box you may be seeing that just disappeared. So thank you, Mandy, our tech support, for taking care of that. So, some of the words that stood out to me in that selection of video clips of students are words like terrified, nervous, anxious, overwhelmed. This is a new experience for students. And I think that it just shows there is an opportunity for colleges to make sure students feel welcomed and like they know what's going on and what's expected of them. And again, if you do have any questions, just feel free to drop those into the Q&A and we'll respond to you. But as I mentioned earlier, what we're going to focus on, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. I'm going to go back one slide, but I just want to ground this in a little bit of data, why the first weeks matter. And these are clearinghouse data. A lot of you have probably seen these data before, but about 1 in 4 community college students don't persist from their first semester to their second semester. And about 40% of them don't return from the first fall to the second fall. So what is keeping these 1 in 4 students from returning for their second term? And the SENT survey has always been focused on the entering student experience, but what we really have tried to do with this redesign is focus in on those very early experiences that we think can help shape persistence. So now let's talk a little bit about the redesigned instrument. So why did we decide to redesign the survey of entering student engagement? Well, student realities have evolved. This was really highlighted, I think, during the pandemic. I mean, financially, socially, technologically, students' lives are different, and we need to respond to them in new and different ways. Institutional priorities have shifted, as you all certainly know. Colleges are increasingly focused on basic needs to help their students on pathways clarity, on transfer clarity, on issues of equity. And these kinds of things require sharper measures. If institutions are going to be able to intervene and take action, they need data early and they need data that are actionable. So we didn't go into this process lightly. The redesign was rigorous and it was collaborative. We put together an advisory committee, and it was composed of a community college president, a vice chancellor of administrative services, and then 2 experts and researchers from the field: Rob Johnstone, who's the president of NCII, and Hannah Lahr, who's assistant director of research for the Community College Research Center, or CCRC. And then after they helped us put the first draft of the survey together, the redesign survey, we conducted cognitive interviews with community college students across different ages at 3 colleges. And we conducted these virtually via Zoom. And based on those cognitive interviews, what we're really looking for was, are the items clear? Are they relevant? Are they aligned with early student experiences? And then we went through an iterative refinement process. Okay, what do we need to change based on all of this input that we've gotten? And our redesign principles were really 4 guiding measures that shaped the redesign. We really want to focus on what are the early conditions that institutions can influence. Realistically, what experiences are students having in the first 3 weeks, by weeks 4 and 5? Are the items clear? Are they usable to colleges? And what can we streamline? Because we didn't want the survey to be so long and unwieldy. And Alicia will talk in a little while about how the analytics are going to be provided to you when your college participates in SENSE. But one of the things that we're going to do is give you data much earlier than we have in the past. And we want to give you, we're going to give you all the data early in a certain way, but we want to really focus it in 2 areas. And one of those areas is about entry onboarding and early momentum. And this is really kind of, the student transition to college. So for instance, did a student see an advisor before they registered for classes? What was their orientation experience like? If they didn't go to orientation, why didn't they go? Have they missed any classes in the first 3 weeks? Have they missed any assignments? Do they have their course materials? And then we will also want you to be able to have information about student experiences with academic goal setting and planning, and also issues that students report that could keep them from persisting. What could cause you to withdraw in those very early weeks? And again, I want to listen to a little student video clip for you. And I think this will really set the stage for how important that goal setting is early. So let's listen into this student.
So I know exactly what classes I should take at what times, and so I can graduate on time. Makes me feel good, makes me feel like it's doable, and I can see like exactly what I need to do in order to achieve my goals.
So that student had a very good experience with academic goal setting and planning. It makes him feel good to know what's coming. But as we know, not all students have the same experience. Let's listen into this student when she talks about her experience with what she thinks is coming next.
I don't know what classes I'm supposed to be taking next year. I did hear from a classmate that next year I'm supposed to be taking my, uh, what is it? Like my core classes. But the only other thing that I've heard about next semester or in the future is moving from the lower level of the building from my hospitality classes and my basic culinary arts, moving up to the baking and pastries part of it. Not knowing how long it's going to take me to complete my program, it does make me feel a little overwhelmed because I don't know what's next to come.
I'm not aware of when I should graduate. I'm just still kind of in the mindset that I am going to graduate in 4 years. So I'm hoping that's what happens.
So here we have one student who's feeling overwhelmed. All she really knows is that she's going to be moving from one part of the building to the other part of the building, which isn't ideal. And then we have another student who says he's hoping what he thinks is going to happen is going to happen. So you see the real difference there in those student experiences from the first video clip to the second one. Another area in which we really expanded in the redesign survey is in the area of basic needs or essential conditions, as we call them. So the survey will now include items about childcare, transportation, mental health services, healthcare services, housing assistance, food assistance. And it's not enough really to know if students are aware of these services, but we're also asking, are you aware? Okay, have you used the services? And if you've used the services, did they meet your needs? And why did we add these kinds of items to the survey? Well, it's because of, we know what's going on in students' lives, but also because of a basic needs project that we did a couple of years ago in 2024, where we asked students, you know, have you needed food assistance? And when we asked entering students this question, over a quarter of them said that they had. And of those students, almost half said they didn't get the help they needed. We also asked students about housing assistance and transportation assistance, and the same sort of pattern revealed itself. So we do know that there is a need for expanded essential conditions and to know about expanded essential conditions. And the last areas in which we've really expanded items on the survey are in the areas of belonging and pathway clarity. And I really think of this as connection and direction. If we think back to that first set of video clips where students talking about the first time they came on campus, and several of them said, I didn't know anybody, I didn't know anybody. I felt alone. And so just making that connection is so important. And we know over years of doing focus groups with students, if a student can just connect with one person, it can make all the difference in whether they persist or not. And also, as we saw in the last couple of video clips, that goal and transfer clarity is so important too. Knowing the direction that they need to go is so vital for students. And I'm going to play just one final video clip for you. And this is a student named Carlos who we had the opportunity to interview about a year and a half ago in his first fall semester. We interviewed him several times over that semester. And when we interviewed him the first time in the semester, he was so excited about starting college, just really energized about it. And as we interviewed him a couple more times, we saw he was struggling, and then he didn't come back for the second semester. But we were able to find him, and he agreed to be interviewed from his home over Zoom. So that's what this clip is of. And he talks in this clip about what he wishes the college would have done differently. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this for you.
As a first time student, when you're coming in, and especially if you're first generation, your advisor, whoever it is that you're speaking to, should ask you, are you sure that you can handle all of this? Or like just actually like talk to the student and make sure they understand exactly what they're getting themselves into before you put them in a situation that they might not end up being so comfortable with. I feel like the college could have just worked on better communication, just more like reaching out to the students and just checking up on them, like hello, like, how are you doing? Like, is there anything that you need? Do you need help with anything? Just not that I know that they're not obligated to because they also have their own jobs and stuff. But when it comes to being a first time student, sometimes you don't have that help from anybody else. Most of the time, I knew way too many people that went and they were like first time, first generation. So their parents couldn't help them. Their brother or sister couldn't help them because nobody else had gone to college but them. After I left, nobody said anything. Nobody emailed me or messaged me on Canvas or anything.
So, as we heard from Carlos, he really wanted that connection. He wanted somebody to reach out to him, and he felt like that was missed. And he wanted that advising, where an advisor would have said, that might be a little too much. And I see Philip said, very sad. I totally agree. Carlos is this, his situation is heartbreaking to me because he lets us know, here's what could have happened if only this had happened. But really, I show this to say that, there are things that we can do, and we can do these things early. If we just listen to students, they'll tell us what they need. So the institutional implications for this redesigned sense is that our hope and our goal is that this instrument should move the conversations about your entering students from general impressions to early actionable insights, which Alicia is going to talk about more in depth. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Emilio to talk about some administration updates.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you about the redesigned sense. We've been working on it for a while, so it's nice to kind of bring it to the world through this webinar. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the administration and what's staying the same and what's changing. And I see a lot of familiar names here, so I know that I have an audience that has administered Sense in the past or CCCSE. So Sense has always been administered in week 4 because a lot of the items ask students to reflect about what happened in the first 3 weeks of the semester and before. That remains the case. We want to capture those early experiences and we want to capture them as soon as they've occurred. So that's not going to change. The survey is going to be available as a fully online survey or a device-based survey. One thing that has changed is that the survey will no longer be available as a paper survey. And as you'll see in a bit, that's because we're offering real-time data, and it's impossible to offer that to colleges gathering data from a survey instrument that's on paper. You're going to still work with your CCCSE liaison. Your CCCSE liaison is going to guide you through the administration, provide you the resources and support that you need to have a successful administration. So the first modality, and I'm going to go back. That's the fully online survey, and it's very much what you've been doing with Sense and with CCCSE. It's a survey link that is shared with all survey eligible students. In the case of Sense, it's going to be students 18 and older that are in their first term at the college. The second option is the device-based survey, and this is something that we've been doing for the past 3 years, and it really intended to mirror the reliability of the paper administration. We're going to pull a random sample of in-person courses that are likely to enroll entering students. And by that, we mean first level reading, writing, and math courses, as well as any dev ed courses, and also student success courses that enroll entering students. Once the random sample is selected, we're going to prepare survey packets just like we've done for the paper administration for many years. However, those survey packets are not going to include surveys. Rather, they're going to include instructions so that the faculty member or survey administrator that's in that classroom can guide students through the process. And it's also going to include little cards that have a QR code and the survey link that can be passed out to each student so that they have an easy time accessing the survey, which is administered via Qualtrics. It's accessible. It makes it a little bit faster, and it gives us opportunities to do things like skip patterns and things that save time and are efficient that we're not able to do with a paper instrument. In addition, obviously, there's going to be some students that have not had the opportunity to be sampled because they don't attend any in-person courses. The survey link can be shared directly with all survey eligible students that attend courses exclusively online. The survey continues to have options for additional items. there's going to be one 12-item module that's going to be the same for all colleges. It's going to change from year to year. For 2026, the topic is on holistic advising, and I'm going to place a link to that after I'm done speaking. And in addition to that 12-item module that's administered broadly, you're going to have an option with the second 12-item module, and you're going to be able to choose from three of our item sets. There's one on basic needs, another on mental health and well-being, and finally, there's one on culture of caring, which combines a little bit of basic needs and mental health and well-being. So check those out. They should be available through that first link that I put in the chat, ceci.org/sense-info. In addition, if you prefer to administer custom item sets that are unique to your college, you still have the ability to do that. There is a fee associated with a custom module, whereas the other ones there's no additional charge for them. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia, who's going to talk about analytics and the data that we're going to offer you.
Thank you, Emilio and Courtney. Great to have you all here today. Before we get into some nitty gritty, I just want to kind of ground us in our philosophy around the analytical approach we're taking with Sense. And it mirrors at some level the redesign of the instrument itself, which again, as Courtney mentioned, right, the goal really is to support your midterm adjustments. So what's happening in the fall? How do we make sure that these students persist from the fall to the spring? And also paired with your longer term strategy, your institutional goals and priorities. As Courtney mentioned as well, and showed the slide on the focus areas, part of the redesign of the instrument and the analytical approach will be organized around what we're calling these focus areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And again, the goal is it's built for disaggregation. It's about your students and disaggregating in various levels. How do we manifest this philosophy? It's manifested through two phases. Phase one is what we're referring to as real-time insights, and this will be live dashboards. What do I mean by live dashboards? This means it will have a dashboard interface, and every night while the survey is being administered, right, it's weeks 4 and 5 and beyond, there will be nightly refreshes of your data. So you could potentially every morning log in, see what new data is there. This data will just be your college's data. That's what unweighted data means. And so it's your data for your institution. What will also be offered during this real-time phase one portion are disaggregation by various student groups. And as we've said throughout, the goal here really is to help with early pattern detection, to help with action. You all have lots of student success data that you're collecting in the fall. And our goal really with this phase one approach is to support that effort, right? To bring more data, real-time data, more actionable insights to you during the fall semester. Second phase is what we're calling the deep dive. And that I would say is more akin to kind of the normal spring reporting that you're used to, right? Once the survey closes, we're able to do the weighting, we're able to provide national context, we're able to do some expanded disaggregation. And again, you'll get that same student level data file that you've gotten in the past that you can download and merge with your various student information systems and see patterns at your local level. Now, would I love to tell you, hey, we've got some great dashboards I can live demo for you today? I unfortunately do not. But what we do have that we thought would at least be helpful is to share some screenshots of our dual enrollment survey of student engagement, known as DESE. We've created dashboards for that survey that will absolutely be expanded and enhanced as we look towards Sense in the fall of 2026. The DESE dashboards will be delivered this summer for those doing the spring administration. So I'm going to just kind of step through and give you a flavor of what we're building in those dashboards that will be applied to what we're going to do with Sense. All right, so first up is your landing page, right? You kind of come in and there's overview information. There's going to be tips and guides for navigating the dashboard, the code book. And then as you see, we've got 3 buttons here for DESE, which is executive, focus areas, and demographic comparisons. And so what you'll see, right, between Sense and DESE are we have these focus areas. And so if you were to click on this purple focus area button for DESE, it takes you to this landing page, right? And these are the DESE focus areas. And for Sense, what we're talking about, and Courtney mentioned earlier, are the entry, the onboarding, the early momentum, advising, those focus areas would appear here for Sense. And so say I'm interested in, I want to dig into the academic advising and planning focus area. So if you clicked on that icon for DESE, you're then taken to another dashboard. And what you can't see here at the top, but you can see in the bottom left, is there are some filters that you're able to apply to the data that you're seeing. So this academic advising and planning focus area are all the survey items from DESE that make up this focus area. So we'll do something similar for Sense, right? You would see all the items for that focus area, and it would be the college, your college, compared to national, right? And again, you can disaggregate it. Next, this is if on that landing page, this was the executive button. And again, we know that everyone needs this kind of executive view. So what we've done here with DESE to kind of show you is this is more of what I'll call a KPI view, right? It's a high level. I just want to download something. I need something to maybe copy and paste into a PowerPoint presentation. That was the design that we were going for with DESE here, and that we would likely do something similar for Sense. Again, what you can't see at the top, but at the bottom left is you can filter this data as well by various student demographic variables. This is your college's data. This isn't showing you any comparisons. This is really kind of the executive view for your institution. And then finally, and one of my favorite, because I'm a bit of a data nerd, is the demographic comparisons. And again, part of, as we've tried to look at data, what we did here, the design is there's a group A on your left-hand side and a group B on your right-hand side. And it's the ability to look at different student demographics side by side. So it's just easier to see the differences. And so on the left for DESE, what you see is I've selected male first-generation students, and I've selected a couple of items from the survey instrument that I want to take a look at. Then on the right-hand side, I've selected female first-generation students, and there I can see the same 2 questions. Again, the idea would be you could quickly identify differences across these 2 groups a little bit easier. I also did want to speak about the issue of benchmarks. And as we've stated multiple times, this is a really significant redesign of the Sense instrument. And therefore, the previous benchmarks cannot be used. What we are doing is developing new aggregate measures that will reflect this new redesigned instrument. Naturally, though, that's going to take multiple survey administrations. And so we wanted to be upfront about that. Like, we know we need aggregate measures. We're absolutely focused on that. However, we are going to need to get through at least 3 administrations to feel comfortable with those new aggregate measures. And as I kind of wrap up this analytics discussion and we head into the conversation, the Q&A, and I hope everybody has their questions at the ready, just to kind of put a bow on the approach here. And again, you've heard it throughout this discussion, as we redesigned the instrument, as we thought about what we could deliver, the goal is really about how do we allow you and support you on those early fall obstacles that students are experiencing? How do we help you get data? How do we help support you in that endeavor, paired with your longer term institutional priorities and student success goals? That's what we're trying to do with this approach. And with that, I will turn it over, and I think we're ready to open it up for Q&A. And I saw some webinar chats going on, so I'll let my colleagues Courtney and Amelia, who've maybe been monitoring that, step in.
Alicia, so we have a couple of questions in the chat. And Catherine asked if we're trying to track changes, improvements longitudinally, will there be any items that are same from the old sense or all questions and focus areas updated? And I can jump in here and then Alicia can jump in as well. So Catherine, there are some items that are the same from the old sense. One of the things that I didn't talk about in the redesign of the survey, I talked about what was added, but I didn't really talk about what was taken away. So I can mention that kind of briefly now. We reduced items around placement testing and dev ed just because current norms and the current reality of community colleges and how they operate. And the revised or the redesigned sense also removed a lot of the classroom engagement items. And the reason we did that is absolutely not because we don't think classroom engagement is important. I'm a former community college faculty member, so I definitely think it's important. It's because that early in the semester, we found that many students have not really experienced the full range of instructional practices. And we feel like we get to all those classroom engagement items with CCCSE, our survey that happens in the spring. Now, there are some faculty interaction items on the redesigned sense, but they're more about what's happening in those very early weeks. Like, did you get a syllabus on the first day of class? Do you know how to contact your instructor? Did your instructor learn your name? Kind of hearkening back to that idea about connection. So that is there. So there are some items that are the same, but the survey really was redesigned. If you are interested in seeing a crosswalk, we do have one. It's not exactly a crosswalk, but it's got the areas of items from the previous version of Sense and the areas of items from the new version of Sense, and you can see kind of how they correspond to each other. Then just send us a note after the webinar, and we would be happy to share that document with you. It's a pivot table. We'd be happy to do that. Alicia, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, and again, having been working in an IR office and having to support these conversations, I understand the concern about longitudinal trends. I absolutely do. And as we, kind of looked at the items, what I'll say is one for one, challenging, but it's more about we went deeper. Right. And so, for example, we asked questions in the previous instrument about financial aid or financial assistance. It's not that there aren't financial assistance questions on the new one. It's just we went deeper into caveats and parts of financial assistance. And again, as Courtney mentioned, we're happy to share it. I would say, and Courtney or Amelia can certainly chime in. Our goal, I think, in certain areas was we went we expanded in the basic needs and the areas that we learned about that were really important that weren't necessarily covered previously. And so, right, there's kind of that expansion into areas that the data was telling us we needed to, and then kind of a really more focused view on that kind of onboarding early experience that we wanted to focus on and drill down a little bit deeper on. And so again, as we said, hopefully it's not going to completely upend any longitudinal trends, but I think, Amelia, do you want to talk about some options for folks worried about kind of that longitudinal perspective?
Yeah, sure. We certainly understand that there are colleges that are using our items for QEPs and other processes that really rely on looking at an individual item. As I mentioned earlier, you have the opportunity to add a custom item set at the end of the survey. So if you do have questions that you have to ask and you have to ask them in the same way, you can certainly add them as a the custom item set. If you are using questions from the old Sense survey in a custom item set, it would be considered free of charge. We would not impose the fee for the custom item set.
Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
I was going to say, and I see Aaron's question that was also in the chat. Again, I think we're this is a redesigned, and I understand valid and reliable, and that's certainly something we're going to look into. Again, if you only have 140 students, that's a question I would say for your campus, right? I often, when I talk about doing norms versus disaggregation, it does it make sense? And that's why I think the focus on the real-time insights as we thought it through, that really is you looking at your institution. I'm not, again, rankings are great. It helps to sometimes be able to kind of say, here we are compared to some national number. But often when those results get delivered and you're like, well, the benchmark says this, or it, not that that's not helpful, but in the end, the question has always been when I've worked on a campus is, well, how does this apply to our students? How do we take this context and do make improvements and goals and priorities for our students? So again, I think we're trying to support both views because we know both views are important, especially for senior executives. They appreciate having some sort of national view of, well, overall, when you're looking at thousands and thousands of students nationwide, how are our percentages compared to those? But then also, as I said, the expansion of a lot of capability for your student demographics and looking at that data for your institution, that's where we've tried to kind of juice it up a bit because we know that's super important. Emilio, Courtney, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that when you're at a small college, and particularly here where we're reducing the population to entering students, you do you should put a lot of effort into trying to make sure that all of the students have an opportunity to participate in the survey. So I would highly recommend that you consider a device-based survey, meaning you're going into classrooms. Also, with really small colleges, there are opportunities to potentially survey all students in a way that's less obtrusive intrusive to the classroom. For example, maybe all of the students or a good portion of them are taking student success courses. And then we can be flexible with the sampling then. We can find the subset of courses that minimizes duplication while at the same time gathering the feedback from at least the vast majority of your entering students.
Thanks, Emilio. And I think this is a good time to raise another question that was asked in the Q&A, just for some clarification around the sampling process and who gets surveyed. So the survey will only be open to the entering students in the sample courses and all online entering students, not all entering students, correct? So can you answer that one for us, please?
Yeah, that is correct. So the idea with the sampling is that it's going to sort of take care of representing all of the students that are taking in-person classes. So if you are participating in a device-based modality, you would survey only in the classrooms that were selected, randomly selected. And also you would reach out to all of your online-only students. There are going to be entering students at your college who attend courses in person that you don't need to share the survey with. There are also going to be some students in those courses that are not entering students, and we will gather data from them as we have in the past, and we will report on it. However, there will be filtered out from your main reporting.
And Emilio, can you speak a little bit to how, if a college participated in the online survey, how that would work as opposed to the device-based?
Yeah, so device-based is happening in the classroom. Online is not classroom-based. And we don't want to limit your population there. As you all know, gathering information from a substantial number of students through a purely online instrument takes a bit of effort. So we don't want to limit the population. Therefore, you want to share the link with all survey eligible students. And as I mentioned earlier, 18 or older, and they are brand new to your college. That includes students that maybe have transferred to your college, but this is their first time on campus.
Thank you.
I was going to quickly chime in on Derek's question about the number of questions. And so while there's a total number, what I'll say is again, getting away from a paper survey opens up lots of capability with respect to branching. And so there might be a total number, but it really will depend on that student's experience, how many questions they actually receive and answer. And so we were very mindful with this redesign of trying to reduce the cognitive load for students. And so again, while they're like we could give you a number, and I'm not saying we won't, I would just caution you to understand. And I think we put the PDF link at the beginning in the chat. Like if you go to look at the PDF version that we posted online, you'll be able to see all of the branching and the logic that's used in the survey. So again, comparing the number of questions, we absolutely did our very best to reduce the time it takes to complete the survey, because we understand that students don't like to take survey. They want it shorter, they want it quicker, and we absolutely kept that in mind as we were redesigning the instrument. Amelia? Any other?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add,
Okay.
Derek. I will get back to you with a count, but as Alicia said, the branching makes it difficult to compare the two instruments.
Right. And Emilio, people are probably interested to know about how long we anticipate the survey taking students to complete.
Yeah, we believe it's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete, very similar to the old version of Sense. And again, there could be a range because some students might not answer questions if they haven't used the services, for example. They may not have to answer questions about their satisfaction with those services. There's a little bit more branching, therefore a little bit more variability. But we don't anticipate that the average will be very far away from that 15 to 20-minute mark.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I see the question that came in about pretest. So what we did was cognitive interviews. So as Courtney mentioned, we worked with the committee on the redesigned instrument. We did more refinement internally, and then we ran cognitive interviews. And so the alpha, I don't have that yet. We haven't launched. And so once we run the Sense 26, we'll be able to do those types of statistics. But at this time, we don't have that information. We basically, again, worked with a panel of outside experts. We also had data from, right, all the feedback we've gotten on the current instrument. And then, as I said, the cognitive interviews with students. And so we will circle back with you on that information when it becomes available.
Thanks, Alicia. And I'm not seeing any other questions right now, but we'd certainly be happy to entertain some additional questions if anybody has any. What I will say is that, again, just thank you so much for joining us today. And we know we might not have covered everything, or there may be a question that you have that comes up, and please just feel free to get in touch with any of us about that. I do see a question in the Q&A now that says, is there a redesign plan for CCCSE? And so what I would say about that is not at this moment. We have made a couple of small tweaks to the CCCSE instrument over the last couple of administrations, really when it comes to some of the demographic items like Pell Grant status and gender and race and things like that. But we're certainly, in tune with what's going on nationally with community colleges. And if you have feedback about CCCSE, then let us know. We'd love to hear it because we want to make sure that the surveys are working for you, because that's what they're for, so that you can best support your students. Alicia, Amelia, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we always need to look at our surveys, and we certainly value your feedback. When redesigning Sense, we certainly took a lot of the feedback that we got over the years with that survey into account when redesigning the instrument.
Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, and like I said, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out. Since 2026 registration is now open. And if you go to our homepage, there's a banner, a hero image at the top of the page. If you follow that button, it'll take you to all the kinds of information that we talked about today, and also a registration page. And registration will be open through the end of May, so quite a while longer. So be in touch with us with questions that you have, and we're looking forward to our continued work with you. Thanks so much for joining us.